welcome to another session of Industry Connect from SkillActz. So we started this recently, and we are planning to bring more of these kind of sessions which features people from the industry. And talking to students across campuses, to introduce them to the corporate world and what they can expect when they enter their work life. So excited to share another from the series. Today we have with us Mr. Arjun Satish, who is the head of operations of CareStack, and Mr. Jayasuriyan KV, who is the product head of CareStack. As you might all know, CareStack is one of the leading startups in Kerala right now. And so welcome Arjun and Jayasuriya to the event. Today they are going to talk to us about how it is different working in a software services-based company versus a product kind of company. It's not to say that one is better than the other, but more how these are different, and you can also understand and choose what would suit you better. So without further ado, I think I welcome you both to this event, and I think the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anand. So maybe Jay and I can give everybody a very brief intro of us, and we'll get started from there. So my name is Arjun. I lead operations with CareStack. I did my BTech in SCT Trivandrum, and from there we started building I started personally building startups. So I've been a person who's only worked with startups throughout my life, and I've been on both the services and product side. So today we're over the last 5 years we've been building CareStack, which is a enterprise healthcare software product. So it's a software platform that services dental practices, and dental practices in US is a very large market. And it covers all aspects of managing a dental practice like an enterprise. My role in CareStack is what people call business operations. So across legal, financial, revenue management, and certain other portfolios, I manage some key aspects of the business. And Jay is our head of product, and I'll pass it on to him.
Yeah, thanks, Arjun. So, yeah, hello, everybody. Great to be talking to all of you. As Arjun said, it's a small correction, actually. Arjun said that you've been building CareStack for 5 years. Time flies when we are, building something that we all love to do. It's almost been 7 years now, if I remember correctly. So
my bad, sorry. Yes.
Started off. No, it's absolutely, the reason I pointed that out is because time flies. Really, time flies when you are actually doing something that you love to do. So yeah, as he said, since end of 2014, we have been building CareStack together, along with a bunch of like-minded folks. As far as my background is concerned, I became a startup guy only around 2013, and before that, for around 8 years, my background was in services. So I started my career way back in 2005 with Infosys. Then I had a stint with HCL for some time, and then I worked for a very kind of boutique e-commerce consulting services company called McFadden Consulting, based out of Trivandrum. They're still here in Trivandrum, and based out of Trivandrum and Virginia in the US. And so I, after my stint at McFadden, I kind of wanted to pivot whatever I was doing until that point of time, and I dabbled my hand with a number of people doing a couple of startups, which did not do really well. After which, I met Arjun and everybody else here at CareStack. We're just about getting started at that time. And so ever since that, that meeting, we have all been working together, building what is currently, one of the most prominent product tech startup companies from Kerala. So yes, I mean, that's a brief background of myself. I just to let everyone know that I started my career with services with big companies and then moved on to the product and startup world. So I guess I can talk from both perspectives during the course of this meeting. Back to you, Arjun.
Thank you, Jay. I hope that gave a good context on who we are. So first of all, thanks for coming here and listening to us. This is I consider this a if I were in your shoes, I would consider a conversation about. I would have appreciated a conversation about this way early in my college life also, so that without going through a lot of mistakes and without learning it the hard way, we could understand what the industry is and make decisions, whether it is career decisions, whether it is decisions about building something on your own, about this, because there's a lot of notions in the industry today, and you would be subjected to them as as you proceed, right? As you get out of college and start thinking about your career. What we can tell you is what we have learned and what we have understood, and it's absolutely our perspective, and just hoping that would be contextual and useful for you. This is, again, like Anand said, not to say that one kind of company is better than the other, and you would hear that all the time. You would hear that this kind of company is better than this kind of company. This is safer than this, or this is this is more this will make your career better than the other one. And it's often said that product is better than services, and it's often said that services is safer than product. Personally, either of us do not subscribe to that kind of binary philosophy, and we have not understood that to be true with our experiences either. Like Jay said, we've also been part of startups that failed, and we failed in product and we failed in services, right? We've made money in product, we've made money in services. So it's not binary. It just depends on the context. It just depends on where we are at what point of time, and what we want to do, right? So that's kind of what we are trying to do, just to give you some context on what are the different business models, what are the kinds of technologies, what can you expect out of each of these kinds of companies, and how they operate as individual businesses, how they build their business models, right? Anand, would you like to share the screen to just display the agenda to everyone? Sorry, Govind. Yes. Thank you. So this is just to help you visualize. We don't have any slides. This is just to give you some sense of how we are taking you through this discussion, and what are the points we are trying to cover. Anything apart from this, we can definitely address, and we can definitely talk about in the last Q&A session. We'd be very much open to answering any kinds of questions on this topic, right? Or about us, for that matter. So, so again, for the context of this discussion, we are really talking about technology companies. We are both of us have, most of our lives we've worked within technology, so we'll just stick to what we know. We're really talking about technology companies, dividing them into product technology companies and services or consulting technology companies, right? And just so that you can start visualizing, every time I say product, every time I services, what each of these are, right? So services companies are companies like Infosys, TCS, Cognizant, Accenture, KPMG, Deloitte, USG Global, being for people in Trivandrum, you would have seen the large building. So services, those are the service, more notable examples of services companies, right? On product, as you can imagine, Google, Zoom that you're seeing, Apple, Swiggy that most of you probably order food from, or Zomato for that matter, Paytm. All of these are the notable product companies you can think of. Microsoft, Amazon, right? So those, when I say product and when I say services, I hope you have some context to visualize and relate to with the more known examples, right? More common examples. Now, from there, let me talk about what each of these companies are, right? So, by virtue of the name, product companies are companies that build a product, right? So, what they do is they identify an opportunity where, if there is an opportunity to build something from scratch that solves a relevant business problem, right, or a relevant opportunity. It can be as simple as we need to be able to buy things online, or we need to be able to order food online, or companies need advanced software to serve certain purposes. So companies need a software to run payroll, or in our case, very notably, we identified an opportunity that dental practices needed a software to manage their business in a manner that helped them make revenue, run operations efficiently, build large multi-location dental businesses. So that's product companies identify that problem or an opportunity, something that is missing in today's world, or something that can be done better in today's world. They believe there is a validity towards that opportunity or a problem, and obviously they also need to make money off it, right? So there is a opportunity to create value and create revenue. It is a problem that worth solving, where there is money, there is ability, and there is a need, right? So that's what product companies do. Services companies, on the other side, are organizations that provide, very simply, consulting. They help other organizations with their goals. So if I am CareStack and we are in the business of building software for dental practices, we have a team of almost 500 people across US and India. We have about 450 people in India. We have about 50 people in the US. And let's say today we want to build a software for managing attendance or managing payroll, right? Our own problem, or we have something that we need to solve. We have two options. One, we can hire engineers and hire team, product managers and build something, or we can take the help of another company, right? And we say, hey, consulting firm, can you help us? This is what we need to build. This is what we're trying to do. We don't want to build this ourselves. We need your help, either because we don't have the right people, or we don't have enough bandwidth to do that. So we'll help, ask for that help, right? And they'll work with us. We will have to tell them what to build, and they will build it for us, right? Oftentimes, they might also help us understand what is to be built. We give the problem, and they work with us on helping us visualize and helping us agree on this is how this problem needs to be solved, and they build it for us. That's what a consulting is, right? Now, when again, going back to examples, now that you know a very high level picture, let's talk about what would you not think of when you hear product companies and when you hear services companies, right? So you obviously think about Google, Apple, Amazon, Swiggy, all of that, but product companies are also companies like I mentioned, companies that services other businesses like us. So we build software for dental practices. There are software companies that build products for specific verticals, specific industries. So it can be healthcare, it can be retail, it can be payments, right? banking, airline, travel. So if I'm able to put a software product for a certain vertical, then it's called a vertical software, right? And then we talk about software as a service, again, where we build a software and provide that as a service. So we are what the industry calls a vertical SaaS. We are focused on a certain vertical, and we provide. We don't just sell the software like in a CD, or we don't just sell it. We provide, we host it, we service it, we support it, and hence we are called a software as a service. So we are what industry calls vertical SaaS. Then there are, other less known, or less thought of types of products which help automate. So if we are, we are doing something, and let's say there is an action that one of our team members or a few set of our team members have to do every day, right? Or there is a certain set of tasks that has to be done on a recurring manner. There are platforms that build business automation tools. So interestingly, there is a new startup that came about in the last 2 years in Kerala, well-funded and going places. It's called Jiffy.ai. They are a robotic platform automation tool which helps automate business functions, right? That is the other kind of business product that you can see in the industry. The last example I would take is something we call platform as a service, where they're not selling a software as a service, they're selling a platform. Let's say you're building a software, and if you're building an online software, you want to put it up on the server, you want to put it up on the cloud. You wouldn't think of, and you don't want to run it on your own servers, right? So you want somebody to help you provide a platform to be able to do that. The notable ones there are, and most of you might know this, Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, DigitalOcean, all of them. So they provide that platform and provide that as a service. It need not be servers. It can also be communication. It can be where you can use my platform to send emails and text messages, right? So providing a platform without a specific industry function or a specific feature to be built, where we can use that platform to build a product or a feature on our own. On the services side, we talk about in addition to the Infosys, TCSs, and Accentures of the world, there are also other consulting firms that consult on very specific problems, right? So there might be consulting firms that will consult purely for e-commerce. We'll only, and it can be small or large. A niche might not always mean small. It just means they're just very focused on a certain function, and they're experts at it, right? It can be, these are companies that help you build solutions for marketing or for AI or for e-commerce. It can be industry specific. It can be a technology specific. There are companies that only work on a certain technology skill set that probably most companies will not have, right? So that's what's called niche consulting. So this is on a high level what these companies are, right? And in product, the differentiation, the categories would be software as a service. It could be enterprise software, depending on, or it can be a consumer software, right? So it can be a business to business software where it's provided as a service. It can be a business to business software where software is pre-packaged and provided, or it can be a B2C product where a business is selling directly to a consumer. The biggest example of a B2C software would be Netflix, where the business is creating a product and giving it to you as users, or Swiggy, right? In services, again, the categories are largely divided on what kind of services they provide or what industry they service. There are companies like Infosys are multi-industry. Then there are also consulting companies that are working on a specific industry like healthcare or travel or logistics or e-commerce, like we mentioned. So that's kind of how the business models work, right? The business is structured. for providing certain set of services or providing certain amount of value to their end customers or users. Right. Now, how do we think about building these, right? So when we are thinking about a product company or a services company, how would they make money, or in what manner do they capture revenue and they capture value, right? So let's talk about services, and that's probably the easier part. If I'm providing a service, you're paying me money for it. It's as simple as that, right? And there are largely two models that work, where I can say we'll bill you for an X dollar per hour. So I can do this project for you. However long it takes, we'll support you. We'll bill you X rupees or X dollars per hour for our effort. And it can be where different kinds of effort is billed differently, right? So our development will be at a certain rate, testing will be at a certain rate, a senior developer will be at a certain rate. So it's what we call staff augmentation, or where we are providing them with resources, where those resources are trained, these team members are trained, they are capable, and they are mentored and supported with management, and they help the customers work, get what they need. They consult with the customers, and the billing is based on the time they work, right? So if it takes $20,000 to build a product or $1,000 to build a product, you have to pay them accordingly, right? The cost will be different. The second model would be a fixed bid, where I say I want to build something, I want to know the exact cost of it, and you can bid for a project, and you can just charge me for it. So that's called a fixed bid, where no matter how much time they take, the cost of the project is limited. And there, the service companies will have a larger decision making in terms of how to do it, how much resources to put into it, things like that. Largely, the larger companies that you see are usually T&M, or time and material. They build them based on time. You will see probably government projects or smaller projects go as fixed bid. Right? On the product, it's a little more complex. So with the product, the number one thing is that you have to build an entire product to start making revenue, right? So if I start a company tomorrow and the product takes 10 months to build, there's no revenue until the product gets built, the product gets customers, and the product starts making revenue. And even when the product starts making revenue, it might not make enough revenue to cover everything, because the product might be sold, or probably the product has to be sold 100 times before we make enough revenue to cover our cost. But then when the product gets sold 200 times, that's a lot of money, right? But until the product gets built and until the product gets sold 100 times, in this example, we are losing money every day, right? Through all the business expenses, payroll, things like that. And there are two ways to fund this. Either, smaller startups what they call bootstrap, where they bring in enough capital on their own, or they reduce their expenses, or they do other services work, things like that, and try to make their own money to meet their expenses. The more common, especially in today's world, the more common scenario is where we raise funding, and this is where you see news articles and everything regarding startup funding, where you'd say this startup raised so much amount of money. What it means that I can work with an investor who believes in the vision, and the investor might invest money in exchange for equity, right? It's as simple as that, and we might go with multiple rounds of equity as the company grow. We take that capital, and that capital is essentially an investment, right? So it's not revenue. So the more money somebody raises does not make the product better. The more money somebody raises just means that there is a higher pressure for somebody to build a product better, right? So we raise capital like that, and then we try to use that capital to the point where the product gets built, the product gets enough customers to generate revenue, and then scales from there. And usually it takes years or even close to a decade for the company to break even, to meet their expenses with revenue as opposed to with funding. But from there, hopefully the company, with every stage of growth, they are making exponentially more and more money, right? And that is why product companies get valuable faster, because after a point, the growth is very exponential. With services, the growth is linear, right? So that's a very high level overview of the business, of how each of these businesses are structured. And I'll let Jay, take you through a few other aspects of how products and services are, and how you can think about them when it comes to working with them.
Yeah, thanks, Arjun. So see, I mean, this is what Arjun has very briefly given you, is a 30,000 feet view of what and how both of these different types of businesses operate in the market, right? Of course, there are a lot of finer nuances when it comes to what actually happens on the ground, and a meeting like this is definitely not going to be enough to actually discuss most of the operational and the business model related finer aspects of these things, right? But I hope that you have got a very basic understanding of the operating models of the product companies and the services companies, how they make money, and what is the different types of pressures on them to become profitable or to become operationally sustainable, right? Okay, so I'll try and focus on chiefly my experiences and as a fresher who entered the services IT services world almost 15-16 years ago, and then start from there, and look at how the product company exposure or product experience has actually changed my perspective about how technology is being considered. Okay, so first thing is that I hope I'm audible properly. Okay, so I'd say that I started my career way back with Infosys in 2005. So okay, and for me everything was new at that time. Okay, and in the services world, what I realized is that how big Indian companies, for that matter, big global services companies have scaled is by building their expertise around either a particular business domain or around a particular technology. Okay, so for example, if you look at a big company like Infosys or TCS or Accenture, for that matter, whoever is operating in this what we call the services company space, right? You can see that they'll have broadly, they'll have what they call a business group or a vertical group, which focuses on, one group would focus on banking and financial services customers. Another group would focus on let us say retail customers like Walmart or Nike or whoever is there. Another group would be focusing on healthcare customers, big hospital chains, pharmaceutical chains, the likes. Right? Another group, depending upon the kind of company, another group may be focusing on aerospace. Another group may be focusing on travel sector. So so what has happened is that over the years, all the services and the consulting companies have made investments in employees to build up their expertise in any one or more of these business domains, leveraging which they have actually gone to a lot of customers in each of these respective domains and said, look, we can serve you better. We have done so many projects related to healthcare in the US market. We have 10,000 people who are certified A, B, and C certifications for healthcare. They know the healthcare and the insurance segment inside out, and we can be a very trustworthy partner for you when you have any technology related requirements or problems to solve in your organization. Okay, for example, an Infosys would go to, let us say, one of the largest insurance companies in the world is Aetna. There is an insurance company in the world called Aetna. Infosys will go to them, say, okay, look, we have done all these projects in the past, and they'll showcase their expertise around what all they have done in the past, how it has helped their customers in healthcare, like other insurance companies or other hospitals, and how the current talent pool in Infosys has so much expertise, so many hours of expertise doing all of these things and all that. So that gives credibility to a services company to stake its claim for doing more business in a particular domain. And the next time they go to another insurance company, they say, okay, look, we are now working with Aetna. This is all the stuff that we are doing. This is how we have impacted their business, given them, more return on initial investment and all of that. And so that is how services companies build their, business. So naturally, if you look at the organization also, right, the whole organization, Infosys or TCS or whatever, is divided into mostly divided along these vertical domain expertise areas. Okay. Now, in addition to that, they also invest in building expertise around specific technologies. Like for example, large, let's say, SAP implementations. SAP is a large company which provides a complete end-to-end software platform for very big manufacturing companies and in all types of businesses. Infosys helps in implementing SAP. Okay, so Infosys has a lot of people who are focused on SAP as a technology platform, as a technology stack. Similarly, they would also have a lot of people who are dedicatedly focused on, let's say, Java-based technologies. A lot of them focused on .NET-based technology. I'm just giving a very simplistic overview, but correspondingly, right, when as a company you invest in building expertise around either a business domain or on or around a technology, right, your organization structure is also going to be dictated by that strategy. Just as I said earlier, Infosys has a large business group on insurance. They also have a large center of excellence on SAP. Okay, people who are part of these different groups work with different customers and create new service offerings for all of these customers specific to their domains. So this is how it happens generally in a services or consulting. This could vary depending upon what each of these large companies focus on. Like for example, Dassault Systems, they are a consulting company, focuses on aerospace and defense, which is not something that a lot of companies do, right? There are companies which focus only on e-commerce customers, services companies which focus only on e-commerce. Sapient Nitro is a services company that focuses only on e-commerce. At least as far as I know, I mean, that's what they do. Probably they've changed, but anyway. So at a high level, right, the organization structure is based around these core competencies. In a product organization, right, the focus is less around domains, because the requirement is not so broad based. You don't really have to serve all kinds of customers in all different types of markets or anything like that. You probably have your product. Now, of course, as your product scales and becomes bigger, these are problems that you may have to address. But as far as a product company is concerned, the organization structure, because of a lack of need to distribute the expertise into all of these competencies, right? The structure is fairly flat. You will not see a lot of people, focusing on different verticals and things like that. You'll just have a very flat structure where you have a core engineering group where you have probably a software engineer, a senior software engineer, and an engineering manager. Probably that would be it at the first bucket. You'll have a product management group where the product managers are primarily focused on building or defining the product experience. Like for example, if you're a product manager at Swiggy, you would be responsible for one of a number of sub-modules in Swiggy. Let's say Swiggy checkout. So everything that you as a user experience during the checkout process may actually be defined and managed and constantly monitored by one of the product management groups inside Swiggy. Okay, you could have a lead product manager and a number of associate product managers working with them. Then there would be a business group which is focused on all the numbers around which the business is growing. Whether are we good, doing good as a company as a whole, which are the markets where we are doing good. Like for example, staying on the example with Swiggy, right? Swiggy is now operational across India. They have number of businesses. They have a food delivery business, they have a grocery delivery business, they have a Swiggy Genie, which is equivalent to what Dunzo and all of that. So these are different business lines. Each of these business lines would have different business managers who would again be focused on smaller categories of their businesses. Like for example, if I'm a business manager with let's say the grocery delivery business, right? And if Swiggy's grocery delivery is operational in, let us say, 15 cities in India, I may have 3 people working with me, each of whom are responsible for 5 of these cities, constantly monitoring the business growth, the performance, and the opportunities for each of these 5 cities, right? So the whole business kind of rolls up, and the people are responsible for small chunks of the business as a whole. Okay, that is how generally product companies function. I took Swiggy as an example because it is very much relatable to most of us, because it's something that we use on a day-to-day basis, right? So the organization structure, as I said, I mean, just to summarize, is governed primarily by what my objective or what the organization's objective is. Okay. Now let's move on to probably what you guys would be interested in more, which is what does the organization expect from you if it is a product organization? What does the organization expect from you if it's a services organization? Okay, and then we'll get into the last part where we'll talk about broadly about benefits and work culture, and then we'll open the floor for questions. Okay, so because of the way in which, or because of the differences in the way in which these companies operate, right? The expectations from employees for each of these type of companies is also different. Okay, what a Swiggy expects from somebody who's working as either in the product group or in the technology group would be different from what a would be different from what an Infosys or an Accenture would be expecting. Okay, so if you look at services and consulting first, right? The primary expectation there for anyone at some point in their career would be to contribute in expanding the business. Okay, when I say expanding the business, as I said earlier, most of the services consulting companies are organized into domain level groups or technology level groups. If you are in a domain level group where you're working with, let us say, you're in the health and or you are in the insurance domain, and you're working with one of the insurance companies in the US market. Okay, you would be working with them. What the expectation is, regardless of whether you are a software engineer, whether you are a technology lead, or whether you are an engagement manager, right? At some point in time, the expectation would be to use your relationship and your expertise to get more business from your end customer by working with them in a very consultative manner. So going deep into what their problem areas are, uncovering their finer nuances of their business, and then figuring out if there is anything that TCS as an organization can do to contribute to their problem areas, right? So which would mean that the focus on a particular customer in the role that you are playing, the focus on a particular customer has to be very high. Okay, you will also be expected to work in a more structured manner, be a very frontline communicator, because communication is primarily the way in which at some point in time you would be able to gain the trust of your customers, and over a period of time bring more business as an individual as well as into the business unit, right? So communication is going to be super important. You will also have to work within a particular budget, so it's going to be a very structured way in which you will have to work in a budget. You will have to record the number of hours that you have worked. You will have to report all of that with your superiors. So the work is more structured. You'll have a lot of rules that would govern, how you work in a team, a larger team. And you would be expected to, as I said, become a domain or a technology expert over a period of time, regardless of how you start your stint within a bigger consulting company. After a period of time, you are expected to become an expert, either a domain expert, business domain expert, like in insurance or healthcare, or a technology expert, like core Java architect, or somebody who is very good with Microsoft services or AWS, whatever. Focus on one technology, become very good at it, so that you can use it to work with the customers. On the product side, right, things are slightly different. Okay, there, due to the difference in the way in which the organization is set up, as I said earlier, right, you are almost always going to be working with a much smaller team. Okay, and this because of that, you are expected to exhibit a significant level of ownership and self-drive. Okay, if you are going to actually take ownership of a particular area of let us say the checkout experience, you will have to own it inside out and believe that there is no one else who's going to actually come and check the the code or check the experience for you. You will have to take ownership of that. In larger organizations, there are structures in place which would limit the amount of exposure that you may have, the amount of ownership that you may have. The product organizations, which are typically smaller organizations, that's not the case, especially when it comes to fast growing product startups. A significantly high amount of ownership is a bare minimum that is required from every employee, not just in the product management or technology function, but anyone who comes into a product company and wants to make a difference, right? You're also expected to learn by yourself a lot of things. You're also it's also acknowledged that you will fail because of the higher pace of working and the higher pace of growth of the organization. People are bound to make mistakes, and mistakes are not seen as something that is a big problem. In most product, in good product culture companies, mistakes are accepted as a part of life, and you are not measured based on the mistakes that you make. You are measured primarily on what you did after you made that mistake. Did you learn from that mistake? Did you go ahead and correct that mistake as soon as possible? Did you take up ownership of that mistake and communicate it in front of everyone? That's the kind of attitude that is valued and is priceless in a product environment. I can tell you that because that's the kind of attitude that we look for in people. So, and I know that Arjun would agree with me 100% on that as well. Right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So, and that is also, so there is also the other side of this coin, right? And as the famous dialogue goes, with great power comes great responsibility, but with great responsibility, you also get a lot of power. Okay, because of this high amount of responsibility that is placed on your shoulders, you also get to do a lot of independent decision making, or at least when compared to a corresponding role in a services organization, you will have a lot more independence to make decisions, and to grow faster as an individual. Okay, so you are not going to be governed by a 9 to 5 worksheet where you will have to log your time on a daily basis as to when you started your work and when you ended your work and how many hours did you log working for your customer. Because in a services company, that's absolutely required, because if you work 8 hours for a day, in most cases, the customer is going to be billed saying that, Jay worked for 8 hours, and we are billing Jay for $40 per hour, and so you'll have to pay $320 per day for Jay. In a product company, that's not valid. I mean, in CareStack, we don't have a timesheet mechanism at all for engineering. People can come and work whenever they want. They can leave whenever they want. We don't press anyone. But the point is that the expectation is that you would take up ownership for your side of the work, understand the impact of your work with respect to what others are doing, and then complete your work correspondingly in a time-bound manner. Right? You can do it maybe in the morning, you can do it maybe in the afternoon. If you feel like it, you can do it during the night time. It's not a problem for us, right? As long as you take ownership of your work and the impact it has for your team members, 100% everyone is okay with that. Okay, it is also, and because of that nature, it is also performance driven. You are not going to be judged on the number of hours that you worked. You're going to be judged on the impact of the work that you produced. How good is your code? How clean is it? Okay, how fast is it? Did it break? Did it cause issues in other modules? That is the kind of stuff that will make or break your career in a product organization, because impact is all that matters. In a services side, and again, nothing wrong in the other approach. Okay? And I want to reiterate that because I've come from that world. There's nothing wrong in that. Okay? It's just that it's a different business model. Okay, you have a lot more organized, structures around you, and you're expected to do that, because if you don't do it in an organized manner, the whole structure will collapse. There is no way in which somebody who's at the customer side can know how much you have worked for them. Then it would be very difficult to justify the amount of money that the services company would be able to bill on behalf of you. So those structures are required. Those structures are necessary to actually execute that business model. So come back, right? There is no right or wrong, good or bad, profile in between products and services. One last thing, in most services organizations, again, because of the way in which it has evolved, uh, almost all of the customers are outside India, which means that if you're part of a services or consulting organization and you become a domain or a technology expert, there is a very high probability that you would have the opportunity to travel for the short term or the long term, and work with the overseas customers in North America or Middle East or US market or Europe markets. Okay, which is a great experience in itself, which is something that significantly adds on to your personality, the exposure to other cultures, exposure to other different types of thought processes, and all of that is something that definitely enriches you. So that's a big addition that services companies would be able to offer you. It's not something that you would probably have with a product company, where your market, you are kind of leveraging the power of the internet in most cases these days, to distribute your product in a very fast manner, which means that your presence as a contributor is not really necessary right next to your customer. Okay, so that's something, something that product companies would probably not be able to give you. But on the other side, generally, very good product companies are better payers when it comes to remuneration. So the comparable compensation would be higher for product-based companies when it comes to services-based companies. But you realize that the expectation is also drastically higher for product companies, and the performance review process is also brutal. If you are not found up to the mark, if you are not found up to the mark in terms of your performance, your output, and your contribution to the team as a whole, product companies would not hesitate to push you out of the organization and go for someone else who can actually do a better job. Services companies, by in contrast, are more forgiving in nature. They invest more time. They give you more time to actually scale up and understand and build expertise around a technology or a domain. Okay, based on my experience, right? So these are some of the things that I can talk about based on what I have seen, based on what I've gone through, and based on what we are trying to implement right now at CareStack at least. Right. So I guess I'll stop here. We have 10 more minutes, so it's probably an apt time to pause and open the floor for questions. So every time I do this, right, every time I open the floor for questions, there is a absolute silence, generally for the first 15 to 20 seconds, after which somebody intervenes and says, okay, can we have more questions? So this always happens.
Absolutely, that has been our experience too. Meanwhile, I would like to pose one question. I was once speaking to somebody in a service based company, and they were looking for people, and they said they don't want people in people from a product background, because people are not used to the pace and expectations of a service-based company, because you don't have a client breathing down your neck. I mean, it might be that person's individual perspective, but it would be interesting to hear your take on that, because I think for the youngsters also to find set their expectations correctly on how this works.
See, and I'll probably answer that question. Okay, so I think it's not about timelines, because timelines are tight in all kinds of companies, right? Depending upon how impactful your work is and how much your appetite for growth is, most companies will end up doing work that is higher than, bigger than what they would be able to complete in a timeline. But beyond that, right, I think what makes the difference for people is how much they'd be able to learn, right? I mean, I can have a customer breathing down my neck, and it's a very valid thing. It has happened to me multiple times when I was working in services, and that can happen. But as long as the work that I'm doing, right, is something that is challenging, something that is new, something that makes me learn something new and becomes better as an individual, right, I'd go with it, and I'd learn from what I'm doing. I'd learn from the customer also. On the other side, right, I mean, if there is someone who is pushing me to do work which really is not valuable, or which is kind of iterative in nature, where I do a lot of things, I kind of I burn the midnight oil, and then after 2 days I'm asked, okay, this whatever we did earlier was not good enough, let's restart, right? That kind of a work culture would actually make me extremely negative in attitude. Same thing happens in product companies also, right? I mean, yes, there are companies where we operate on very strict timelines, and then most product companies that I have found operate on very strict timelines, primarily because most of them are venture funded and have a timeline against revenue predictions and profitability that they're running against, right? So most of them have this urgency, but even there, I can say that okay, you have, this is very urgent, you need to get it done, we need to roll out this module in the next quarter. But if that work is not really challenging, or if the work is not really engaging for people, right, they'll still feel disillusioned in a product company. So I think that's how I would interpret that, rather than actually the timelines directly making making an impact.
So I'll add on to that, and I'll add on to a couple of points that Jay said. It's about accountability, right? And in a product world, all the team members, engineers, product managers, everybody are accountable to the product that they're building. So to speak, it's you have to see it as your baby, right? And again, if I have to take Jay mentioned the sentence, with great power comes great responsibility. And thinking of Spider-Man is Spider-Man thinks the world's safety is his baby, so he has to run around and save it. So that's a kind of ownership. That's the ownership that we're talking about. Now, what that means is that it's not about whether it gets the quality of the product and the timelines of the product are equally important, right? So there is no you can't compromise the quality of the work or the what you're building just because somebody said we needed to run the state, or somebody said you have to do this and this on the state, right? Now what I build is I'm going to leave a mark on it, and I'm going to be responsible for it, right? Whereas in a consulting company, your accountability is not towards a product that you're building, but it's towards your customer, because the customer's product or customer's business, you're responsible for your customer, and customer is king, right? So you're responsible largely to listen, and there can be mutual dialogue and everything, but end of the day, you always have to listen to what the timelines is. But with that, like Jay said, it can come with a compromise on the quality of the work, right? Because if timelines supersede that, even you end of the day have to give it. Whereas in a product world, there is no question of releasing something that to be inferior. Now that doesn't mean that we can take enough and more time. That just means that you have to keep building that quality under the pressure of time. But just building something for the sake of putting timelines to it does not make sense in the product world. And I'm sure all of us would have experienced maybe some of when something has gone wrong, or maybe when that was not followed, things happen, and we all would have experienced that would come to us in a bad Microsoft update, or sometimes when a website breaks. That's what happens, right? Somebody pushed something where they should not have. All right, so you bypassed certain processes that are meant to test that and make sure that doesn't happen, right? So that's a point. You're owning your baby, and it's what you do will have a very direct impact on the outcome and in turn your reputation. Did that answer your question, Anand? Was that helpful?
Yeah, I think those are interesting perspectives to it. I was thinking probably in the service world, your timelines are dictated by the customers, but in the product world, it's dictated by your ambitions and how fast you want to move. But at the same time, if you are funded, those are also the expectations set by the investors, and probably it is better to have customers than investors setting expectations.
I don't know about that, because I'll just cite one example and keep quiet. The income tax portal.
Yeah.
Yeah, so see, you have somebody more brutal than a customer on the other side. They have put in their hard-earned money, expecting us to make magic, and then the flip side is somebody who'll pay money for if you do the work. Who do you think has more pressure on you, right?
Yeah.
Any other questions?
You could everyone, if you could also put in your comments or questions in the comment box also.
So maybe while we wait for that, I'll add on one more thing, right? Now Jay mentioned about how in product how you have to constantly improve and how you are in a performance. I'll just add on to that perspective, right? So see, in a product company, in a services company, the value is based on the arbitrage between how much your cost is to do some work and how much you can charge, right? And as long as the value keeps increasing, the product will grow. So the value and as the organization grows and as the organization become larger, the number of team members will almost linearly increase. In a product, it's not like that. You're not talking about a company with an equal value in service and product will have way lower number in terms of resources, in terms of human resources in product, right? Now, what that means is the value of each individual working in a product company, the percentage value, right, is much higher than a product. So the value of that company almost is the value of the individual who are building the product and maintaining it and supporting it and all of that. What that also means is that in a product company, the teams have to scale with the company, with the product and the company. So let's say we have, for the sake of example, let's take engineering for development, and let's take 3 levels, right? So that's level A. Let's say junior developer, and then let's say a senior developer, and then an architect, maybe, right? Now I'm a junior developer, and I'm a great junior developer, right? And I'm really good at my job. And then if I became a senior developer, the responsibilities are different at each level, right? Now, if I don't scale from a junior developer or from doing a certain amount of tasks, when the product has grown, when I don't scale to take on the larger set of tasks, the larger kind of scale that the product wants and the organization wants, no matter how good I was in my previous role, if I'm not great in my new role, then I can't be valuable to the organization. So I have to keep myself trained. I have to keep myself learning. I have to keep myself to be able to take on larger opportunities that the organization wants, right? Because I can't, the company can't stay at one level, neither can the employees. It goes all the way up to the CEO. The CEO of a small product can be a really good CEO of a small product, but if CEO does not scale, when the product becomes, let's say, $1 billion company, if he or she cannot be a great CEO of a $1 billion company, I can't say that I was a great CEO earlier, right? And the same applies for everybody in the company. Whereas in a service organization, we can do a work and we can bill, and as long as there is an arbitrage in between, the model works, right? As long as there's a profit in between, the model works, right? So largely, most of the time, that is a forgiving nature of it. Even if that continuous learning is not there, you can keep on at what you're good at, with even if it comes at the expense of a little bit performance or learning, as long as what the skill that you have is valid and it has not gone out of the industry and things like that, you can still provide some sort of value to the company, right? And the company can hire others who at a higher level. Now, I wouldn't suggest that, but that is what Jay referred to as a forgiving nature, right? But in a product, what's important is you can scale with the company, and you have to. It's not really an option. It's just the nature of it.
Somebody just messaged me a question. So, as a fresher, how should I approach joining a services versus product company? How should it be different?
So, I can take that. So, so we go to campuses, right? So ever since 2015, fresher hiring was a big part of us. A lot of our team members joined us as freshers, and scaled up to become important team members in the organization. And we believe in that. We believe in hiring people right out of college. Now, on a product, what we look for very specifically, or what I look for is, we don't care about marks. We don't care about how well you can write an exam and pass it. So when we go, we don't care about marks. We don't care about backlogs. It's not to say that anybody can apply. We have other criteria which set a higher bar, right? We like to talk to people, and we like to work with people who have built things on their own, learned things on their own. So my question, if anybody's at some point of time, we're going to sit at each other, at opposite of the table in an interview. My first question to you is going to be, what have you done in college outside your academics, outside what the college wanted you to do? So if college wanted you to do an internship, that doesn't matter. Want you to tell me what you have done that nobody has asked you to do, that you did on your own, right? Is it learning a new platform? Is it building a small project for implementing something? Is it building a startup, right? Or working with a startup, interning, doing some projects on a freelance basis, building a software for college or for your or for question gives us validity of whether somebody is passionate about building something. Because again, there's nobody breathing down your neck. Even when it comes to your career, the expectation is they learn on their own, they're passionate, and they try to build things on their own, right? So is that the attitude? Now that is uncommon, and which is why it's a higher bar. And that's why product hiring is obviously thinner than services hiring, where service companies can hire a large number of people, product can only hire a smaller number of people. So if you want to work in a product environment, this is what you should think about. Think about building something, doing something on your own, learning something, putting it to use, right? That gives you so much validity in when it comes to talking to an employer. But more importantly, it gives you the ability to build something, to learn. It improves yourself, even if you don't have to show it, right? On a product, on a services world, it's more about. So in the services world, typically, when you join a service world, like I said, they want to usually see if you cleared your backlogs, things like that, because that is important for putting a good resume for your client, and it's important for getting visas and things like that. So they do want to have that structure followed right from the academics, right? So those are important, but that's just the basic entry barrier. But then what they look at is this somebody who can work with a customer? Do they have the thought process where they listen to somebody, hear their problem, and hear them out. This ability to understand it, do what they are told in terms of the work, talk, have a mutual dialogue, maintain a relationship, communicate well, and approach work in a consultative manner. Where so the now, if just to put you some perspective on what a consultative manner is, think about a time when you go to hospitals or when you meet doctors, and then think about doctors who have listened to you and doctors who don't listen to you, right? And think about how it has made you feel, right? So that is important. And when you're working with a client, it's at a different level, and that is important. They have to feel you're listening. You have to actually listen. You have to have a mutual dialogue, and you have to be able to work with them to understand their needs and put that into action. That is an important skill set that you look for, in addition to learnability. If I teach something to you, will you learn, right? And will you reciprocate it, right? So that would be a services, and that is, that is, I think, a function that, especially in our country, in India, we, as listening, following instructions is something that we are taught pretty strictly as kids, right? And a lot of times, we have a good culture doing that. So the talent pool is much wider. We are able to hire, services companies are able to hire a larger group of people, train them, and put them in positions where they can build a career in that industry. Product is just different. We as kids, we are not taught to think outside the box. We're not taught to do things outside what you're told, things like that. So with product is, that's, you have to break those psychological barriers that are usually imposed, have to do things that you're not told, and maybe even things you're told not to do. Anand, does that help?
Yes. So I was looking for whether anyone has ventured with any questions. And meanwhile, one of my colleagues was doing a little analysis of the participants, and I'm heartened to learn that roughly 50% of women. So that everyone is interested in this kind of thing. It is heartening. I just wanted to share, and also sharing how when I back then when I was in college, how we really didn't have these kind of opportunities to talk to people in the industry, and you yearned for knowing what is the real world out there like. But there really was not many opportunities to understand this. So this kind of platforms, and now that these are available these days, I think when a youngster should make more use of it. I was thinking.
So we have met. Sorry,
you go ahead. Go ahead. Nothing. Yeah.
So we have met the kind of places where we have met great talent in the fresher community are student startups. We don't call it student startups; they're startups. They just happen to be, started by students, because nobody's going to care whether your startup is, you're 20-year-old or 30-year-old when you're building a product. So we have met startups that are built by students, and sometimes we have acquired them. Sometimes we work with them, but that's a great place where we have found talent. We have met people who have worked, interned in startups, interned in your seniors, alumni companies, and also done freelance projects, things like that, right? Those are, and we see that across all kinds of colleges. In fact, we see that more on tier 2 colleges than tier 1 colleges, because there is a larger, there is a larger flexibility, and they want to learn, right? So a lot of times, especially for, at least I'll tell you about us, we don't care about what college you come from, right? We don't care about how much marks you have on, or how much backlogs you have. Build skills, right? And whether those are skills that look good on paper or not doesn't matter. build skills that are important for you to do what you're loving, and then finding the opportunity would be the easiest part after that. Anand, were you gonna say something?
No. I don't see many people raising any more questions. So probably we could wind up. Yeah. So
I'll actually just end with one story for everyone. And this was back when I was in college. I was just getting out of college to do my startup. I met this guy, and he was also at my age, who was in college, and he built something which made it easy to book train tickets. He made it much easier to book train tickets. And this was a time when IRCTC does not have APIs or anything like that. And the secret sauce that he had was he found out the CAPTCHA code in IRCTC was not working. Whatever you type in, it'll work, right? So he made use of that, and he built something that made it much more easier to build, book train tickets, right? And he ran an ad on it and things like that. And this was, we were both in third year, or we were both in fourth year. So yeah, I think we were both in third year at that point. And he was based out of Uttar Pradesh, I think. Today, he's actually, a year or so back, I read it out on the news. He started a company, and they raised a few $1 million. And they're building a product for developers. So, that kind of inquisitiveness, curiosity is kind of what either allows you to work in product companies or start product companies.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so thank you, both of you, Arjun and Jay, for turning up and sharing your experiences and views on this platform. And thank you, all of you who have turned up to listen in. It's been great having you. We will come back with more in this series to connect campuses and corporate life and help youngsters to transition into their careers. So all of you have a wonderful weekend also. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Anand.
Thank you, everyone.
And everyone else for having us.
Thanks for having us.